Jim, Jim and I's relationship started off. He was working with a competitor, so we that's where things started. Ed, I think, was one of his first conversations, but just a unique kind of evolution of the business. We've gotten to work with Jim on two separate projects, with Stanley Beer Hall and the Broadway Market. But what I thought would be helpful to the fellow PourMyBeer family members is to kind of hear some of his thought processes. And he really comes at the business from an analytical and process driven kind of mindset. And he looks at everything as a project. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's like, it's not a job, it's a project. And just hearing the kind of passion that came from when he was brought into this project at Stanley Beer Hall to where it is now, and obviously any project he gets involved with. I really wanted to give everyone a sense of how he goes into a project, how he assesses it, and then some of the quick, not quick fixes, but improvements he puts in place right away to just kind of gradually change the direction of the ship. Because anytime you have a business that's going in a negative direction, it's some people tend to oversteer. So if you're going off the road, then you steer back on the road, you oversteer, then you go off the other side of the road. Jim, I think, is very calculated in that he's able to kind of like slowly bring it back on the road and then have it going down at the right direction. So we also had the joy of getting to integrate with his point of sale system in the process and learn about kind of how that product was built. And just got to learn more about kind of the evolution of him in the industry, from fine dining to the big project he did downtown Denver. But really the goal is to just help share some of the tools that he uses and ways he thinks about the hospitality business, and even dive into some of his thoughts about how he's going to transition back. So that's my intro. Hopefully you enjoy the time with Jim as much as I have, and we can all walk away with some nuggets of gold.
Well, that's hard to follow up with. That's more complimentary than it should be, that's for sure. So thank you, Josh.
Jim, if you don't mind, I'll just have you started really quickly on how you got involved with the Stanley Beer Hall and a little bit about your history background, and then you can take it from there. We'll have more questions as we go.
Okay. In the process that Josh mentioned, I've fortunately or unfortunately had the pleasure of getting involved with many troubled companies, either just by timing or by ask. So the need to fix things has been more mandated than just wanting to go in and tinker with things. So I ran a fine dining group in Denver that was involved with had the restaurants in the Denver Art Museum, the Denver Performing Arts Complex, all the theaters there, as well as the only 4-star 4-diamond restaurant in Denver, and a couple of other restaurants. I was fortunate enough to take that over in December of 2007, which meant it was 2008 and so I got to deal with some large projects and how to turn them into how to keep them alive during the last financial downturn. Then I left and did Union Station. That was the DO that brought that out of the ground in Denver, largest project financially in Denver in several decades, because of my association with Kevin, and that was a pretty fun project. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's kind of a traditional train station in the middle of downtown Denver that was in mothballs that we stood back up with 7 restaurants under my operations, plus a hotel, plus all of the hotel room service and the banquet service and such like that. And I was in charge of coordinating all that and getting to work with the Park Service and a historic building and TSA because it's a train station, and trying to make everything coordinate. So I've been lucky enough to work on a couple of big, pretty interesting projects. I got asked to come to Stanley Beer Hall where I'm sitting now. They were having some trouble after they launched, had brought in a consultant that kind of guided them in a traditional direction that just didn't work for them. And through my other associations in the market, they found out found their way. I found my way to them, or vice versa, whatever. And we came in and found out that that this market had some very specific needs on timing. And after watching it for a little bit, I was familiar with self-pour because there was one self-pour in my neighborhood that I actually went to once in a while. And after coming up with the idea to rip out the bar, which I'm actually sitting in the middle of where the bar used to be, I convinced ownership that this was the need that they had, because in this location you have 90 to 120 minutes a day to make all of your money. So you couldn't hold people at the door and have a traditional host managed seating platform, because you would lose anywhere from 30 to 50% of your business every night. There was big complaints about timing on food, on how long it took to get drinks here. And then the added layer of the patio, which is right behind where the camera would be that you're looking at here. We have another 200 seats outside. So then we would, in the summer, double capacity without adding any kind of any ability to handle additional volume. So self-pour was the natural solution. Unfortunately, I made the mistake, as Josh alluded to, of bringing in I Pour It. I didn't know about PourMyBeer at the time. They didn't pop up on my searches back then, which was a while ago. I had an okay start with them, but ended up having lots of problems with the tablets and support, and couldn't get any kind of integrations done, couldn't get any advancement in the software. And at the same time, later in that process is when we opened Broadway Market, and luckily enough, my beer tap installer pointed us towards PourMyBeer, and that's how the association got together between Josh, that's all, and myself. And then through that great experience down at Broadway Market, decided that it'd be best to bring them in at Stanley, and actually spent the money to tear out I Pour It and buy a second self-tap system, PourMyBeer. It's the one part of it you're looking at behind. And at the same time, work with them and do an integration with POS, and it's been fantastic ever since.
I know that when we talked together, one of the things that you wanted to focus on is really embrace the time when you have people coming in, make the process as fast as possible to maximize the food ordering opportunity there, the beverage sales. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that for most of the people that we have on the call, they have restaurants. They have food as well. It's not just self-pour taproom. So it's going to be relevant.
So a big challenge for this operation was, like I said, the timing of people coming in, getting a drink in their hand, and then getting food out to them efficiently. The main thing was getting them into the seats. So I removed the gating of making reservations and having to check in with for tables at the host stand, and just made it open seating. So all you have to do is come in, check in, get your beer card, you can grab a drink, and then once everybody has a drink in their hand, they're okay with waiting a few minutes to sit down. In our market here, we have a lot of families, so people come with children. We have a lot of area within the market for kids to run around. So it allowed the adults to just start relaxing, even though they weren't at their table yet, and start having experience and spending money in the restaurant without standing outside the door. From there, everybody, it's kind of first come, first serve on the seating. On Friday, Saturday nights, we'll do 700 to 1,000 people, and you can't turn the tables fast enough. So we have at the table service, a little more traditional food service. So we drop menus. The staff comes up with handheld POS and orders right at the table, and the food. We redesigned the menus so that the pickup time on our food is. We tried to gear it for everything to be picked up in 4 minutes. There's a few items that run to 7 minutes. So even when we're busy, it usually takes less than 15 minutes for the food to hit the table from the time it's ordered. Usually it's less than 10 minutes, but on the busy nights, it gets there faster. All of that really fit the market that we're in, specifically because the typical age of the people that live in the area, having children, a lot of them have younger children. So any of you who are adults or parents know that, 45 to 60 minutes, your kid explodes from either being tired or the sugar rush or whatever. So they only have so much time to consume as much as they can. So the self-tap wall allows them to both drink at their own pace, eat at their own pace, and let their kids kind of run around because it's such a loose structure, the kids being kids doesn't disturb the other guests as much as it would in a traditional seated restaurant. In our restaurant, because I had the partners in the POS set it up so that our guests can come in and they can actually add their tip and sign for their tip when they check in. When they're done eating, they just get up and leave, drop their card, walk out the door. We don't have to deal with checks or anything like that at the end of the experience, which has been a great help, and it really got rid of the line at the front door, even on our busy nights. So that whole workflow has been great for this market.
Since you've mentioned kids a few times, and I will reveal a secret that Jim, I'm not sure if it was you, but somebody from your team might have, came up with a great idea that they don't have a just self-pour beverage wall for the adults, but there is a self-pour soda station right next to it for the kids. So, while the adults are having fun at their beverage wall, kids can have fun at their soda beverage wall. Besides that, is there any other way that you are promoting the family friendliness and trying to talk to your community in that direction and market it that way?
Yeah, we do a lot of things for kids. We have a flat price kids menu, $6 a child. That includes one of our 6 items on our menu with fries or edamame or tater tots or something like that. Plus a soda. We also do a lot of promotions with the local sports teams. We pay to sponsor softball teams and such like that in each league. And any of the leagues that we sponsor, if the kids show up in uniform afterwards, the kids all get half off their kids menu, so that the adults come with them. So it only costs us $3. It's really kind of a wash for us. But the teams come in regularly. Plus, we have kids running around, which may not be appropriate, but kids running around with Stanley Beer Hall on their uniforms. So, all over all the parks in the neighborhood. So it works pretty well for us. It's money well spent. We see our return on investment many times over.
You're kind of doing it like McDonald's. You're bringing them in right now when they're illegal age, but as soon as they turn in, they'll be back for the adult beverages too. So
yeah, we do. We're lucky that the kids do. We try to make sure that the kids really enjoy the meals. Our mac and cheese is really popular with them, because they do talk to their parents and say that they want to go here, but their parents want to come because they can walk in without a reservation, sit down. They can walk in with 50 of them, and we take them. There's no restriction on size. They don't have to have a reservation or anything, and they know that they can find a space and they can get a drink if they didn't plan ahead. So it really works out well for us.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to clarify here because Noah asked something in the chat that was specifically to self-pour. I just want to clarify that the self-pour that Jim has for adults is the regular RFID PourMyBeer card. For the kids, it's just the regular Coca-Cola self-pour machine. You don't need any RFID technology for that. The kids just grab their plastic cups and start pouring. It's the regular one that you will see in Chipotle.
I am working on a solution to get that onto the RFID system, though. So we just had a call yesterday about that, as a matter of fact. So
okay, we do
stay tuned.
we do have a self-pour soda machine solution. I think the alcohol is more fun, but that's just my take. If you can, we'll switch a little bit more. I'm not really familiar how your loyalty program works, but that's something I've been seeing a lot of interest. And if you can talk about any loyalty program or some way to implement to get customers come back, that would be awesome.
In our system, our POS system, we have a built-in loyalty program. I'll be honest with you, in our market, not a lot of people use it, even though we track it. Our system is a straight spend so much money, get so many dollars worth of a coupon effectively. It's attached to their name when they come back. So it's basically a 100 for 5. So for every $100 they spend, we send them a $5. We send them a $10 coupon, or it gets attached to their name, and they can apply it whenever they come in. In our market here, we're lucky to have a relatively affluent market here that are not very price sensitive, so they honestly don't redeem it very much. So it's not a very effective program for us. We track it well, but it just doesn't. We just don't get a lot of use out of it. In all of that, though, we do have, when they sign up for it, we do capture their email address, their contact information. All that allows us to send out any kind of promotions we're doing, live events we might be having in the field outside. NCAA tournaments, we always give away a bunch of free beer cards for the Final Four, top 5 spots. So it starts at like $250 for the winner and goes down. And we get about last year, not this year because we couldn't do it. Last year we had almost 500 people sign up for it. So it just gives us some good engagement. And again, a lot of our guests know each other, so they get a little friendly competition between known bodies that doesn't cost them anything. So.
We talked to an operator a few weeks ago, and he was talking about KPIs. So what are the management KPIs that he looks at, on a daily, weekly basis? And I wanted to go through kind of what numbers are you looking at daily as an operator to keep your finger on the pulse of the business, and what are some of the triggers that create, kind of, all right, we need to recalibrate and kind of relook at what's going, fix what's wrong. So maybe you could delve into that a little bit.
So for us, the main numbers that we look at, revenue obviously is the big one, but revenue divided by number of tickets. So our total check average, not our per client average. Per client average tends to be a little erratic because the number of clients captured is not consistent because of the way people are allowed to come in, and they might come in and join a tab and not even get their own card or anything like that. They might order on their family's tab that was already here. So our revenue per guest average is a big one.
What number is that? Do you have like a benchmark number you're looking to hit on that, or is that?
Yeah, we hit our average check is $50.01 is our typical. So whenever we drop below that, I really go look at, did any of my staff have low sales that day? Was there anything that wasn't, were they missing? Did they have a bad night at selling appetizers, things like that? So I'll also go look at the ratio of alcohol to food. We run really consistent 54% food to 46% alcohol. So whenever my numbers get skewed on that, I'll tend to look through my P-mix and see that I have a big drinking night, a slow food night, vice versa. Each day can be a little off on that, but it's really consistent for us. The days that they're typically off more are the days that we're slow, because you're denominator is just not as big. So it's easy for one group to really skew. If one group comes in and drinks a lot and doesn't eat much, it's really easy to skew your numbers. But tracking my guest count over time and looking at week over week. So if I'm on a Wednesday, I want to look at last Wednesday's sales. I'm not looking Wednesday to Friday. I'm looking Wednesday. Sometimes if I see a trend down, I'll go pull the last couple of months of Wednesdays and just see how if there was something odd. Was the weather off? Was there a concert? Was there something going on in the neighborhood that threw our day off? And then I also look at the same day year over year, same day of the week of the same week number of the year before, to see where our trend is year over year. I look at that every single day. So.
Okay. And I guess from your other businesses that you in hospitality, are those numbers consistent, or is it on a location by location kind of analysis?
Well, it's location by location. The other businesses, the other restaurants I've ran before were more traditional restaurants. So you have completely different numbers. So you really have to compare it to your business model when you're looking at the numbers compared to somebody else. Unless your revenue per person is really low and you might think your pricing is off, you really have to look at how it pertains to your business model. A fine dining restaurant. So for example, the fine dining restaurant that I ran, our check average was $170 per person. So
right.
You really can't compare that to this. But of course, our food cost was actually a higher percentage food cost than we run here at the beer hall because you're serving a different kind of a product.
And coming into this project, what did you just have like a list of all the different key numbers that they currently had, and then you just knew right away, like let's say you had 40 different numbers you were looking at, or percentages, or and then you wrote next to them like what they should be, and then you work towards that? Or can you kind of take us through that evaluation process of when the fire that you came into and how you put out the fire and kind of started looking at it more analytically?
Yeah, so you have to go through the P&L. You have to look at what all your fixed costs are, the things that you can't affect, and you kind of have to build your model from there. You have to take 100%. It's 100% minus what your costs are, and whatever when you get down to your variables, you just have to say, okay, I have my fixed costs are going to be, which are typically 25 to 30%, depending on what your business looks like. Then all of your controllable costs come in, which in our industry we call it prime costs typically, not counting your disposables and such like that. Those are also controllable, but and you have to build your model. You have to build your model based on that. And when there's numbers that are way out of line, and typically your prime cost, which is cost of goods, cost of your food and your alcohol and drinks and such like that, plus your labor costs is what equals prime costs. Old school thought was prime costs had to be under 65%. Now with all of the additional fees and how CAM has gone up and such like that, people need to target closer to 55%. It's tough to get to 55%, but if you can get below 60, you have a chance. You start riding above 60, it's going to be pretty hard to operate. We run here. The labor was way out of control here. The food cost was really out of control. They were running 42% food costs. So they were running almost 80% of their cost was just in prime costs, which is not sustainable. And they'd done that for a year. They lost $500,000 the first year of business here. So the first thing you have to do is you have to stop the flow of each one of those things. If you're close on those numbers, you have to go analyze every single thing that comes into your building and create systems, SOPs in place so that the things that you don't touch every day have a mandate of how the people who do touch them order, produce them, price them, such like that. And that's really, I mean, that's really all there is to it. You know, sometimes when you walk into a place like this that has a structural problem, you have to come up with some bigger solutions like we did with the self-tap system here. You know, sometimes you have to get creative if the business model is broken and your prime cost is in line, then you have to look at some other solutions. So
Nice.
it's just, you know, people in this industry are very creative people generally, and you know, you give them the puzzle in front of them and just say, okay, this works, this doesn't. Come up with a creative way to fix this doesn't.
Jim, can I ask you if you can go in more detail regarding the staff cost? What were you doing besides the beer wall to kind of reduce that?
Well, the kitchen was out of line. The top line was also broken, which your percentage of your sales are always fixed by having your top line sales increase. So we increased sales by 400,000, which was 17%. So that made you know, that helps with it. But you know, there were no tools in place for projecting labor. The biggest thing with labor is you have to budget to a percentage. You can't or a fixed dollar amount per week. You have to give that to your scheduling managers and tell them, look, you have $1,700 to spend on front of the house labor this week, and that's it. And you have to project. You have to say, I'm going to do $50,000 in sales next week, and whatever your percentage number is, you have to tell that manager, here's how much you have to spend for the week. If we start having a slow night, you got to cut people out, and then you got to try and make those numbers, break it down day by day, and they have to schedule to it. If you give them 17.2% and they write a schedule that's 17.3, you got to go to them and say, you got to cut 0.1% out of your schedule. If you don't schedule that way, you'll never make your labor. And that's so having the tools to look forward instead of just looking back is a really important piece of controlling your labor. Otherwise, you're just reacting instead of being proactive.
That makes sense.
And then having the rules in place that, hey, look, if we're slow, you got to have somebody that's assigned to go around and say, okay, you're done for the day, go home, and go home right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a hard thing for some people to do, especially for some managers. You know, and you're concerned about cutting the hours for certain people, things like that. But your job is to maintain jobs for everybody, not just for one individual.
Absolutely.
There was a question across that as well. What's your kind of benchmark for labor costs, like percentage of revenue, and food cost percentage of revenue?
Typical restaurants, I try and benchmark 32%. We run just a little bit below that for food costs here, partly because of the volume. But we put a lot of food on the plate. I would actually like when I wrote the menu for this place, I wrote it to 27%. But then we decided to add 1.5 pounds of tater tots on with the burger and stuff like that. So we became known for big portions, and it's part of our success here. You know, we don't buy a lot of prepared foods. We do a lot of chef touched foods here in a brewery setting. So our food is better, and we're known for that. So we run a couple of points higher than I would like to run here, but 32% is, it's hard to make in better food establishments. If you're running things that are a little simpler, or pizza or something like that, you can run a little lower. Labor, I always try and get total labor. When I start building a model, I start with 25% and try and go down from there. With a lot of what's happening with minimum wages and stuff like that, it's hard to make those numbers now. And you have to be creative about how you do tip share and how you staff your front door. You know, for example, here at Stanley Beer Hall, everybody that's in the front of the house is in the tip pool. So I have nothing but servers, and everybody rotates through the position. So in our location, people that work at the front door are part of the server staff and part of the tip pool. So everybody knows how to do everything. your level of service goes up because you don't have somebody that doesn't know how to do something for somebody having any contact with your guests. Every time a guest asks a question, every server knows how to do everything. And I've been lucky here because of the model we brought in. Our staff does very well. So with the exception of 2 people, everybody that's on my staff right now has been here for the 2.5 years that I've been here. I'm very,
Nice.
very lucky. So, and it's not because of me. It's because they're making good money because of the self-pour system. They get to leverage how much money they make because they only have to serve half of what they're getting tipped on.
Jim, can you talk a little bit more about, like, these are some impressive industry to keep staff around, this long, and so many of them, majority of them. So can you talk a little bit more about what do you have in place? What do you do regarding your staff to keep them around?
Well, we work with them on their schedule. We're very flexible. We keep one during the summer. We keep a couple extra people on staff so that if the staff wants to go on vacation or whatever, they have a little bit of flexibility. We do a lot to we do games, things like that. We don't do a lot of sales contests just because I'm not. Our clientele here, this is not really you're not trying to sell to them. I make sure everybody asks if they want to start with appetizers and talk about our specials, but outside of that, we don't do a lot in the sales contest side. But we'll do a lot of things, like we'll do football pools. We try and make it fun because our staff's been here so long. They're all friendly. Half of my front of the house staff all live in one house, so it's a little incestuous. So that might be part of the secret. So maybe rent them a house and give them some housing, but we don't do that. But they're our staff gets along. They're friendly. I when I do hire somebody new or we bring people on for the season, I really look to how they fit into our culture. I really believe anybody can serve that has normal intellect. So when I interview people, I interview for personality. I don't interview for skills. It's very different than the fine dining piece. I still interviewed for personality, but how they get along in the culture, and how I actually have my after I've talked to somebody or one of my managers talked to somebody, I make anybody that we think we're going to bring on sit down with 1 or 2 other servers and get their opinion of whether they like them or not. So I really try and make it so that everybody gets along, because when we get busy, everybody has to do everything, and the whole restaurant is everybody's station, and they have to support each other. So when you're in part of our everybody's in the tip pool share, you have days that people work expo and they work running food. So sometimes you're actually support for your other servers. So the team has to know they can rely on you, because they don't have time to come off the floor, and they need to know that you're going to bring the food and bring the guests whatever they need so that they can keep taking orders.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So it's really the culture is creating a culture of liking everybody. Our rule here is we only work with people we like. So you can be a great server. If we don't like you, it's reason to terminate you.
Can you talk a little bit more about any other things that you're offering on your self-pour taps besides the best liquid out there, besides the beer?
We have, you just see behind us. So I've been sitting in the corner because of our food production that just left. So sorry about the noise before. So we have, this is our wine wall. So we have 9 taps that are dedicated to red wine, white wine. Actually have Prosecco on tap because they make Prosecco in a keg. And then we have kombucha right in the middle. The other part of our wall, we have 37 taps total. The other part of our wall, which starts right here and goes left, kind of goes from light to dark, but we start on the end with some ciders, move into some other non-traditional beverages. Right now it's just cider and seltzers on there. and gluten-free, and then we move light to dark down the wall from there. But it's that's pretty much. And then the other end of the wall down there is where we have our cocktails. We have 2 cocktails on tap at all times. I'm actually changing that while we're closed to 3 cocktails. We rotate. The margaritas are always on. We rotate between Moscow Mules. We'll do some bourbon ginger drinks. I've done Kentucky Derby drink. I'm trying to blank on the name. We do Bloody Marys. We'll put on Saturday and Sunday morning. Mint juleps, yes. So we actually, I'll have a chef infuse some simple syrup with mint, and then we make the mint juleps out of that. So those sell really well. So we'll have those for about a week to 10 days every year. We do make everything in house. We batch it right into the corny kegs. I took the time to write the recipes so that they're based on whole bottles of everything that goes in them. So, for example, the margaritas start with 3 handles of tequila. So it makes it easy for the team to put them together.
That makes sense. Jim, can you talk a little bit about the percentage? I mean, I know you have more beers than wines, but does the wine and kombucha, obviously you're offering some other beverages, do they account for a significant portion of your sales? Is there a reason for you why you maybe added more, took some of them out?
Yeah, so the market here, it's a lot of families, and I'm going to say this very stereotypical, but I don't mean it this way, but the wives in the neighborhood are kind of known for their wine drinking. So I wanted to make this place a place where everybody in the family could enjoy, partake in what we were doing here. So that's why I wanted to have so many wine selections, because I didn't want to have happen is have somebody say, I want to go to the beer hall, and because they wanted to taste beer, and the other person that they wanted to come with said, well, there's nothing there for me. So I just wanted to I wanted to remove the a reason for somebody to say, no, I'm not coming. So
that makes sense. I just want to come back to one question from Noah. So he's asking, are you using soda kegs to make them? I think that's the corny kegs you're using, right? Is that correct?
No, I don't use soda kegs. I use the levered kegs that the top pops off of. I can, if you want to travel with me, I'll show you which kegs real quick while we're talking. They're right around the corner here.
We will happily travel with you. And then the other thing, how are you keeping them mixed each day? Are you using some sort of agitator, or
Well, we bought the agitators when we first opened. We had some problems with them, and what we found is we were lucky enough to be busy enough that it didn't make any difference. So when we come in the morning, I'll sit in it. We come in the morning, we just pick them up and shake them once for anything that was left overnight. These are the kegs we use. Can you see that? Can't tell from here. So there's the top of them.
Yeah, we can see it well. Nora, can you see that well? I'm gonna
move it up closer. Does that help?
Yep, that's exactly what I was wondering.
Yeah, and they make the agitators for this, but we found we had to send both of ours back because the mechanism broke. So I understand they have some better ones now, but they were $350 a piece, and they only lasted a couple of months before we had to send them back. So so for us, it wasn't necessary. Again, I think it has a little bit to do with what you're mixing. A couple of pointers if you do anything. So, for example, when we do the Moscow Mules, when you pressure up the kegs, it's not going to carbonate the drink. It will hold the carbonation. So for Moscow Mules, I make it I have everybody mix them, and then they pour the ginger beer in very gently, so not to release too much of the CO2 out of and it's the last thing that goes in. And then I have them take it directly to the cooler and pressure up the keg so that it'll hold all the CO2 in, and then they kind of hand mix it, shake it, and then it's ready to pour. And they'll stay carbonated for several days with the pressure on them.
Tell everybody what your top seller consistently is, the one product.
Well, outside of my hamburgers.
No, you're from the South
beer
Pole
wall.
wall. I was surprised to hear this one.
It's our margaritas. We do $250,000 a year out of one tap of margaritas. We go through about a keg average of margaritas every day. More of that on the weekend, obviously.
Do you make them in the house? Do you buy them packed?
We make everything in house. I'm an ex-bartender. There's no way in hell I would buy a pre-made drink. Never going to do that outside of beer. So I actually knew of a recipe that was kind of clarified. So one of the things that you have to be careful of when you use the self-pour systems is the flow meters. So whatever you put through the system can't have any particles in it. So you have to make cocktails that are clarified. I actually came up with a Bloody Mary recipe that was really good, that didn't have any celery salt or anything else like that. I was able to put together a recipe that was all clarified, actually based on a recipe that I did in a place in Chicago at Nick's Fish Market. For the garnish on the margaritas, our staff will pre-salt some of these Belgian glasses. I don't know if you can see that or not. So we'll have salted rims sitting on our glass racks. And then if the guests ask for lime, we'll bring them out. We don't have fresh fruit sitting around, but we do have fresh fruit cut on the expo line. So if people see somebody with a margarita, they'll automatically bring them a lime. We do make them, people know this, we do make them full strength. They're not watered down, and they're not, we use Hornitos for our tequila, so we don't use bottom of the barrel stuff. So we try to make it so that people don't have a horrible hangover, depending on what they had the next day. And it's a good recipe. My friends like them, so I'll drink them.
Josh liked it. It was his first meal of the day. I'm sorry if I'm sharing too much. What's your self-pour first-timers ratio compared to your regulars that are already like, hey, let me show you the self-pour, bringing the family and bringing those friends in or coworkers?
When we first opened, it was tremendous. Obviously, we have a large base, so it's hard to tell, but I would say that we still probably have 20 to 30 newcomers a day, because I'm basing that on who we have to train on how to use the system, or we watch other people show them how to use the system. It could be more than that. So the percentage,
that's okay. I think it's a good number to know that it's the 20 to 30. And I assume you have a script in place that that they learn.
Because my staff's been around for a while, one of the things I tell everybody is, hey, I want you to have an answer for everything, but I want it to be your answer. So because I want your personality to come out. So I try to make sure that they know what they're talking about. And because I know them, I know they're going to communicate that in their way very effectively to the guests. So when we bring on new people, we show them how to do everything, and we suggest different phrases depending on where they're at in the process. The one thing that we do have a fairly set script on, and it's not because we set it, it's because when we're busy, we're running so many people through the check-in station, is when people first walk up to the host stand outside of saying hello, we ask them if they're planning on enjoying any adult beverages today. And that's pretty much the standard first line, because that opens the conversation as to whether they're going to check in and get an RFID card, or if we're just going to say, okay, just go ahead and find a seat. It's open seating, and we'll be right over to take care of you. So it's kind of a good way to start the bifurcation of who comes in. Not a lot of people don't, with the exception of lunch, check in at the front. But you know, we've gotten to a point where I'm going to say 90% of the people that come in, so maybe 10% are new. That seems like a big number to me, but thinking about how often you have to explain what's happening at the front door, it could be 10% are new. So it's pretty lucky considering the numbers of people we did. We did 80,000 separate tickets last year. So
that is awesome. Well, I'm sure it took a while to get to that 90% of the market to already know what's going on, and you know.
It was. I'll tell you what was really fun is we're kind of near the airport, or at least on the path back from the airport. And the first few weeks, there was somebody that came in, loved it. The next week, the week after we went to self-pour system, they went to the airport, picked up a friend of theirs that flew in, and drove them from the airport to the beer hall because they wanted to show them the self-pour system.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just happened to be talking to that guest when they came in. But we have a lot of people going through here with their luggage. So I don't know how more often that happens, but it was pretty rewarding.
That was Josh and me too.
Yes, it was.
But Jim, you mentioned that you do have another self-pour location pretty close to you. How do you handle that competition, if you consider?
Well, it's it's probably, what am I, 5 or 6 miles from here, 3 to 5 miles. So it's a different market than what we are. That's a much younger market. We're a young market, but we're kind of in the early 30s to early 50s market here, where the other one is a little bit more of a college and post-college type of a market. So we're not really in direct competition with them.
The question is, how do you market? Any strategy or budget that you follow?
Yeah, we have a hard dollar cap and a percentage. We have a marketing company that we pay to handle that. We meet regularly to discuss what our calendar for the year is going to be. We typically look out 6 months. Once a month, we'll meet and talk about the following month, as well as the upcoming quarter. Every quarter, we meet and discuss the annual calendar so that we can plan for bigger seasons, how we're going to book events during Christmas, things like that. But to make sure that we're getting ahead of marketing things like, for example, the NCAA tournament that we host, our Oktoberfest we do on the patio, Top Taco that we do out in our field every summer, where we won the Denver Burger Battle 2 out of the last 3 years, and just a number of things like that. So we just make sure we have a calendar looking forward. We look at every single event, decide how worth it is to us for that event, how effective we think it's going to be, and then put a budget to every single event. And then from there, we look at that total budget based on our P&L allocation to that budget. And if we've gone over, then we decide what events we shouldn't be doing, where we should reallocate, should we take some money away from a specific event, things like that. But it's very process driven. From there, the marketing group will come up with a plan from there and their creative ways of doing things. I'm not great at the marketing side. I analyze the budget piece. When I hear an idea, I know that I like it or don't like it, know that I think it'll be effective or not effective, but I'm not the greatest one at coming up with the marketing ideas. I know that I'm weak at that, so I leave it to those that are better.
Are you willing to share like one that either was has been a consistently good marketing tool, or maybe one that you originally didn't think it was going to do that well, but was?
So for us, it's a little more of a top of mind marketing mentality. Just to remind people, oh yeah, we should go to the beer hall. We don't have to do that much. We're kind of lucky as far as that goes. So it's a little bit more of the Geico mentality of just making sure they remember our name. However, on an event by event basis, anytime we do anything that has large outdoor music involved that allows for a little non-traditional experience, we find to be gets eaten up by our community, because a lot of the things that some restaurants do, every restaurant does, when you do something that's unusual, people are looking for new experiences. They tend to do very well. So when we do things, like I said, concerts in our field, which is right outside our patio, we brought a tent in for an Oktoberfest type of an experience. It was just a different environment for people to go drink, which, they're not really doing anything different. They just happen to be sitting in a different environment, and that seems to work well. If there's some entertainment involved with that, it does very well. Music's hard to make money on when you do music events. So typically we try to do them so that there's a lot of people that show up, so we can at least cover our costs in it. There just happens to be a lot of costs in producing music events. So you have to be careful with that piece.
I will just hop back a little bit more in between that marketing line of things. Between print media and digital media, which one seems to be pulling more guests, and if you have any way to track it?
The digital media definitely pulls more. Print media is really hard to track unless you do some kind of a bounce back, like a coupon and such like that. The coupons don't do very well here. There's one that we do that's like a neighborhood. It's one of those coupon books that one of the schools in the neighborhood does, and we kind of do it to support the school. But it's just I think it's a $7 coupon. We get about a little over 100 of those back every year, and I think they sell 1,500 of those books. So that's a pretty good percentage. But that's outside of that, the print stuff that we've done has been rather ineffective. I've done a couple of things in some magazines, some local magazines, some things that are in hotels, stuff like that. But we don't see the bounce back from them. I'm not saying that people aren't coming because they saw our name. That's possible, but tracking that piece is very difficult. The digital part, we can typically track a little better. We can at least see who's looked at it, who's opened the emails, who signed up. One of the big things we do every year, we do a big pumpkin carving thing on our patio for kids. We have a 200-seat patio that you can make a mess out of. So allowing kids to throw pumpkin guts around outside works pretty well. So and we actually ask people to, when we do those kind of events, we ask them to just reserve a free ticket so that we can have some kind of an idea of how many people are coming and we know how many pumpkins to get. Those tickets get gobbled up really fast. So that's a good way to track things. So we have some idea how they come back. So the free ticket stuff on social media works well for tracking. Last year was our second year of it, and we had almost 400 people show up. So it takes a lot. Takes a while to go pick up 400 pumpkins.
I will be there for the next one. and so for the
Great.
Oktoberfest. Okay, we are
One
guys
of one.
to a full hour, so I will probably let you all go. And if you all have any questions for Jim, I'll share his email address, if that's okay with Jim. I hope
Yes,
it is.
that's fine, of course.
Okay, awesome. Also share his email so you can feel free to contact him on your own. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And Jim, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks,
My
Jim.
pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
I hope I didn't bore you guys. Thank you.